Well, hello there, my history heroes. Today we're going to look at Mary the First, otherwise known as Bloody Mary. Now, she ruled from 1553 to 1558 and gained a terrible reputation after burning up to 286 Protestants at the stake. In today's lesson, we're going to examine whether Mary deserves her terrible reputation. Now, Mary's brother Edward VI had made significant religious changes in the country and really pushed through a Protestant Reformation. When he died in 1553, the Duke of Northumberland had attempted to maintain the Protestant supremacy by making Lady Jane Grey Queen. Now, unfortunately for Northumberland, the Tudor name still had cachet, still had great significance and importance, and the people supported Mary. She marched from her castle in Kent and came unopposed to London, and Northumberland was forced to surrender. Now, poor Lady Jane Grey was imprisoned in the Tower, and she had ruled for only 9 days and famously became known as the 9 Days Queen. So, in order to restore the Catholic faith, Mary reintroduced the Heresy Act. Now, this revived the old law, de heretico comburendo. And what this meant was that heretics, people who didn't believe in the correct religion, in this case, the Catholic religion, could be burnt at the stake. Now, Mary did this on the advice of Cardinal Pole. Now, this was a harsh approach and even drew criticism from the likes of Philip of Spain, who thought that this may well turn Protestants against Mary. So during her reign, Mary burnt around 286 Protestants at the stake. This meant that Protestants were brought, chained to a stake, a pole, a fire was built up around them, lit, and they were burnt to death. Now, this horrific death caused a great deal of outcry, and many famous Protestants were burnt. Many of these burnings were captured in a very famous book called Fox's Book of Martyrs, and this outlined the burnings with pictures and gruesome descriptions outlining how these poor men died. Now, this went a long way to giving Mary her terrible reputation, and we must remember it was published after her death. Now, we have many famous examples of martyrs who were burnt at the stake, like Latimer and Ridley, the Oxford martyrs. The famous phrase uttered by Latimer saying, "Be of good comfort, Mr. Ridley, and play the man. We shall this day, by God's grace, light such a candle in England as I trust shall never be put out." And what he's saying here is, by our martyrdom, by our deaths, we are going to light the candle of Protestantism, and it will live forever in England. Now, another famous martyr was Thomas Cranmer, a man Mary deeply hated. He being the Archbishop of Canterbury, who had officiated the marriage between Anne Boleyn and Mary's father, Henry VIII. She deeply hated this man. Now, during his trial, he had actually recanted the Protestant faith. So that means he'd actually promised to accept the Catholic religion. Mary decided to burn him anyway. Now, famously, during his burning, he was tied to the stake, the fire was lit, and Cranmer thrust forth his hand into the flames, saying, "This was the hand that signed it. This hand shall suffer first. This unworthy hand."